quite often in cave art and all the way up through, man starting to come about, I guess, Bronze Age and things, you'll see this depiction here. And this is the sun, and below it is a stairway to heaven. And that's a curious thing, and people didn't know what this meant for a long time, but they'd see it inside of caves and at certain spots. And I think what they were doing was taking a pan of water and putting it on the floor in a special spot constantly, and the light of the morning shining in, glancing off that and up on the wall would be a line, and it marked the lineage of throughout the year getting to summer, back to winter, back to summer, back to winter. But this also may have hints to Jacob's ladder. I mean, you see the depiction there of where you do have a lot of symbolism of a ladder type of situation. Some of these other diagrams actually do have them looking like a ladder. In Egypt, there's a thing that looks like a ladder quite often depicted. There are ladders put in a few stelae that show things like this, and the full sun idea, rather than it being Saturn perhaps. But is there a time whenever Saturn zigzags through the sky, and whenever it zigzags, it gets lower and lower and lower and lower, and then up, 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 up? Does Saturn do something like that? Does Jupiter do something like that? Um, I think this is the sun that we're looking at, sun worship. You can find ancient calendars in some of the cave art that you find, some of it going back over 35,000 years, where you can see the dots that they put below these creatures. Most people didn't know what this was, but they had drawn a perfect square here. If you look at the, you'll hear they've drawn a perfect square, and what this is representation of is the 13 days that lead up to a new moon, and then a new beginning, where you would start here. See the big one, and then you go back to it again. This, by the way, is Taurus, shown right here as a deer. Here's a seal depiction. And notice this one at the top, above her head. By the way, this whole depiction here looks very Aztec-y. Just really reeks of it. But this is something from, I believe this is Assyrian. And over here, there's your spoked or wheel that would be indicative of the sun god, saying that at this time she was still up under the rule of, I guess, Shamash. Here's a seal depiction, and where the goddess Shamash is supposedly meeting up with Inanna and another priestess that has a priest with her. This fringe over here might be a reckoning of the Hebrew people that started out. In fact, this is supposed to be the priest Gudea, who could be Judea. So there. Um, Anyhow, the eight-pointed star, the eighth planet from the outside in, I'm guessing is Inanna here. So there. They have that. They have the crescent moon that there's also shown. It looks like a little eclipse thing. I think these are showing eclipses and points, but the sun god with the flames coming out the shoulders like you usually see. And again here we see Astara, and she also has the same motif going on where she's got that eight-pointed star that's in there. So it's a four-pointed star and a four-pointed star diagonal put onto it. By the way, this Persian motif is like, wife of Ahura Mazda, if you will, or whatever, but it has the ring in her hand there, like Ahura's control ring, and very Egyptian looking, very, very armband, and very Egyptian looking, but not so. And the bow that, of course, is here. The bow. They're showing you that she was once a lover and then turned into a warrior goddess. Look over these and these seals, and one thing that starts to be prominent is her eyes. Notice that here her eyes are extremely dark compared to everybody else's eyes. Everybody else. And then her eyes are extremely dark, like she has eye makeup on, like the Egyptian thing or something. You see it again here with Esther. She's got the Egyptian, these weird eyes. Inanna's original thing has that lizard head look, thing that people always say is the lizard look like. The eyes here that just seem to have that effect, they are open sockets, I guess you would say. Big eyes, colored eyes. So this eye effect can be seen in earliest form tablets with this motif over here of a face of Venus, a face of Inanna Ishtar as being these eyes. So you wonder how you get any lips of an eye out of her. But the planet runs in these eyes that form eventually a pentagram. So this also, which is always looked up as being an igigi or something weird, and people freak out on this. This is Inanna and her eyes. And this is supposedly where they get the idea of Medusa and her gaze, that you can get caught in her gaze and stuff. Look at that, and you get caught in her gaze. If something walked up looking like that, well, no, this is just the eyes of Inanna. This is an odd seal. It shows an odd depiction, which people have said it shows the planets and things. You would think that what they have here is the sun. And then 1, 2, 3, where 3 would be he is stabbing a knife. This is where Earth is, claiming his conquest. There's a 4th, and he appears to be either riding on something and it's dribbling down onto one of these cones, which looks like one of those spinnerets that they ride on, or he's filling it up with water. It's a little urn. There's a lot that can be written off that, but then I'm guessing that what we have here is Mars, and then what he's standing on would have been Tiamat. And this is An's conquest of coming to Earth. And an older seal, you can tell it doesn't quite have the flair of any of the newer ones. Arthur Koestler, a famous author, once wrote in his book, The Sleepwalkers, back in the late 1950s, that the inertia of the human mind and its resistance to innovation, meaning it's continuing to want to get stuck in where it is, are most clearly demonstrated not as one might expect by the ignorant mass, which is easily swayed once its imagination is caught, but by the professionals with a vested interest in tradition and in the monopoly of learning. Innovation is a twofold threat to the academic mediocrities. It endangers their oracular authority. In other words, their speaking authority. This is the way it is. And it evokes the deeper fear that their whole laboriously constructed intellectual edifice might collapse. The academic backwoodsmen, the people who try to find out this information like us, have been the curse of genius, from Aristocrates to Darwin to Freud. They stretch a solid and hostile phalanx of pedantic mediocrities across the centuries. In other words, we just keep making it to where, no, that's not it. People that are just like us, that are searching for the answer, can find out that, no, that's not it. A crucial step to understanding day and night and sun gods and planet worship, I guess, would be that, you can only see these things at nighttime. And that kept hitting me in the face whenever I would look at these rituals that they had. Many of the hymns and the rituals to Shamash and Ra, the celebrated sons of Mesopotamian Egypt, describe these gods coming forth at the beginning of the ritual day. And the terminology appear to signify the sun rising in the east. The only thing about that is that after you see the sunrise, then how are you going to call on the other planets that you can't see at all? I mean, the sun is just blotted out, literally. So it didn't make any sense. So one of the chapters in the Egyptian Book of the Dead is the chapter of the coming forth by day. The sun gods of both Egypt and Mesopotamia turn darkness into day, inaugurate the day, and appear as Lord of the day, and so on. The language is so strong it may seem to make any interpretation other than the solar interpretation appear preposterous, since in our sky the only sun could answer to the images they're talking about. You know, we're right in here. We're right in here. But at the bottom now, actually. But that's what I was getting at, is what would answer that question right there is that it would be nighttime. So he goes on to say, but there's a profound enigma here. It turns out that the day actually began with what we would call the night at sunset, with the darkening of the sky and the coming out or growing bright of other celestial bodies. It's widely acknowledged that the Egyptian day once began at sunset. The same is true of the Babylonian and Western Semitic days, that they would begin at sunset. We know that Athenians originally computed the space of the day from sunset to sunset, and the habit appears to be prevailed among Europeans as well. Kitty cat tail, you're in the way. Yep. So whenever you would start a ritual that would start out with the sun of the day, then that, if the day started at sunset, then you would be waiting all the way until the morning to start your ritual, or you would be starting the ritual at sunset. But then it says that at the sunset would be the coming of Shamash, and so I find that actually Shamash, a lot of these people are totally stuck with the idea that he is planet Saturn. And I had that too, that he was Saturn, and you can see his duality. Well, it's not really a duality, it's the fact of this night-day situation.